That whole process, which by the way, I would still say that I'm still in learning how to delegate and elevate that responsibility more. It's probably 2 years of process. So
Wow.
it started by me realizing I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I had all these really smart, capable people on the team. And someone told me, like, bro, they can't sit in the chair if you're sitting in the chair for them. Like, I'm just doing too much and I'm not trusting them to do what they were hired to do. And so I went into staff meeting the next morning after someone told me this, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, okay, as of today, I am fired.
You know, so often on here, I get ready. We have a plan for how the show is going to go. And I will tell you that today's episode did not follow that plan. And it was so much better than I had planned. So the lesson here is maybe sometimes not following the plan can turn out better. I had such a great conversation today. I learned so much. I've got some information I've taken down. I know that this is just packed full of actionable content. So get ready to take some notes. Please help me welcome my guest today, Ryan Redding with Levergy.io. Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show.
Dude, thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to reconnect. We've done this in the past. So for anybody that listened to my old show, you might remember Ryan. He was a guest a while back and excited to have him on today. Ryan, as in true Talent Tackle Box fashion, I want to start with my favorite question to ask our guests is when you think about your industry, you think about the problem you're solving for your clients, what's that myth that you just want to tear apart, shatter, break down and say, hey, it's not true, even though a lot of people believe it? What's that myth that you want to help shatter for our listeners today?
That's a solid question because I think most people, like when I talk, because we specialize in like home service companies, right? But this is true for a lot of businesses that I know across the board, is they think that there's a certain magic type of marketing that has really high ROI. Like if I do this, I'm going to get really good ROI. And the myth that I think is that ROI is the product of marketing. And I would say that ROI has nothing to do with marketing. The ROI has to do with ops. Marketing has to do with cost of acquiring the customer to begin with, like cost of acquisition. But ROI is everything else in the business that marketing does not touch.
So in other words, they're putting marketing on too high of a platter and just saying, hey, marketing will solve all of our problems. It is the be all end all. Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. People are like, what sort of marketing am I going to get the most ROI for? And I'm like, that question doesn't even like compute. Like, cause it's like, what's the customer experience like? How do you book the calls? Like, what's your average ticket price for the actual transaction you're working with? Do you have a lifetime value of a customer? Like those are the things that influence ROI.
So funny.
Like, so the guys that we work with have like 35 to 1, 38 to 1 ROI, like, which are like made up sounding numbers.
Yeah.
It's not because we're marketing wizards, like we're damn good at what we do. It's because they're really good at operations. Like they're really good at the process of running the business.
Yeah.
That's where the ROI comes from, not from whatever marketing that they're doing.
I remember when I had my agency, it was just a decade ago now. And I remember talking to somebody and he's like, hey, how about I just pay you every time I close the sale? Like that's what he wanted to do, was pay for performance. And I said, well, hold on a second. If I send you a lead right now, how long will it take before you call him back? And he's like 7 to 10 days.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, yeah, that's why we don't do pay for performance, because marketing is not the be all end all. Like there's so much more to it than just that. And then you got to fulfill. And if you don't fulfill, then you have bad customer reviews. It's just,
it's so crazy. I'm always struck, like, and I can see what guys are tempted to do, like the cost per performance, like, hey, revenue share, whatever the sort of agreement is. My deal with that as a business owner is like, you're trying to mitigate your risk. Like, I totally understand what they're trying to do, but at the expense of financial efficiency. The entire deal when you do marketing well is like you should get more efficient over time, where it just maintains a percentage of your revenue. But if you treat it like a cost of goods sold, where every customer you get to pull off X percentage off the top, like the more busy you get, the more it costs you. And I cannot get my head around people who are like trying to like shoot themselves in the face to minimize the risk. I don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense to me.
It's funny. I get that a lot on the recruiting side of things, like pay for performance. How about I just pay you a standard contingency commission like every other recruiter out there? When I hire someone, I'll just write you a check. And that way you only get paid if you perform. And my response is so similar. It's like, yeah, but I'm not the one that actually hires them. I'm not the one that actually decides whether or not they're going to work out. I'm not the one that has to work on the culture so that they want to stay.
Oh my gosh,
so
no
that they don't
joke.
kick in the guarantee. Like so many other factors. And this is why I'm going to probably rub some people the wrong way, but this is why recruiters typically don't work, is because they promise you a great hire, but they throw them into a system they know nothing about.
Yeah, hiring is a great thing. And like acquiring, I'm curious what your take on this is, because I feel like acquiring a customer or acquiring talent, it's a similar sort of process and you have similar sort of obstacles. Like you still have to have like these like big like missional values, right? These things that are intrinsic to the organization, mission, vision, values, like core processes, leadership, this sort of clarity on who's responsible for what.
Yeah.
These things make acquiring the customer or acquiring the talent so much easier. Reputation, like what's the reputation in the community of the business? If you have a really solid reputation, it makes all the customer acquisitions so much easier.
Yeah.
If you have a really solid reputation, it makes acquiring new talent and retaining talent so much easier. Like there's so many of these things that kind of overlap.
Yeah.
That, yeah, to your point, if somebody doesn't want to do the work, and I get it, it's hard. It is uncomfortable to dig in and work on the business. But time and time again, the people that I see have the most success for marketing or for hiring are people who obsess over the details. They know progress, not perfection. Like they want to own the process solutions, right? Not just like make excuses. It's like they know that they've got to get it right because that's their livelihood that they're building.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, you know that I believe that recruiting is a marketing activity. You need to take recruiting away from HR. You need to give it to the marketing team. So right there's overlap. I think that the interview process is equivalent to the sales conversation. You know, it's qualifying them, making sure that they're the right thing and having the plan forward on how you're going to fulfill. Onboarding is fulfillment. Like it's just, the processes all overlap.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when we start working with a new client, one of the first things we say is, hey, what's your online reputation? And I'm like, why does that matter? I'm like, well, your Yelp says you're a 2.2. And they're like, well, Yelp sucks. I can't stand Yelp. They're crooks. And I was like, you know what? You need to fix it. I'm not going to fix it. Screw Yelp. And I'm like, when someone types in your company name and jobs, guess what comes up? Yelp. And they look at that and they go, well, if the customers don't like doing business with them, what's it like being an employee for them? Like that can't be good.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing.
They're so connected. It's all connected. It's crazy.
It really is. Yeah, the best practice, like the fundamentals of having a successful business, like they are consistent regardless of the industry, regardless of how long you've been in business. Like there's some of these fundamentals you just can't get away from. And like having an exceptional customer experience, which then also creates like exceptional like team culture, like all these things that go hand in hand. You can't just pick one and the other.
We talk a lot about the employee experience and people are like, there's such a thing. Yeah. So many companies out there now are saying, oh, our employees are number one customer. Like they're number one. I'm like, but why do you treat them like number 6 or number 7? Like you don't treat them like they're your number one. You talk about it, but when you look at the experience, you look at the way you communicate with them and the way you retain them and the way you support them, it doesn't look like they're the number one at all.
No. And I know a lot of companies like they literally will do whatever they can do to not do performance reviews, not do 360 evaluations, whatever, because they don't want to hear the ways that they need to improve their management and leadership skills. Like they know that they treat their employees like dirt. Like they know it. And they complain about these guys like not having good attitudes and having bad morale and blah, blah, blah. And yet you treat them like dirt. Like, what else do you expect, man? Like, come on.
I see so many companies treat their customers, bend over backwards, do whatever it takes. Customer is always right. And then all of a sudden, one of your employees starts going through a divorce, for example, and you're like, oh, screw him. If he's not going to figure out how to leave his stuff at home and come to work and do a great job, I'm like, no, when you hire that person, you get the whole thing. You get their drama, you get their hopes, their goals, their dreams, you get everything. And I think that, to your point, the reason people don't do the reviews is they don't want to hear it.
It's so hard. Man, we are talking about all things except marketing, which is awesome. Because I think so many of these things like still circle back to like leadership and management chops. And so many people that I know, and honestly, it doesn't matter what the industry, what the trade is. You could be a really good plumber and turn a wrench. You could make really good cakes. You could just be the best like medical professional in your field. Doesn't matter. When you go and open your medical practice or open your bakery or start your plumbing company, most of those guys know very little about running a business and know even less about management and like leading and developing teams. And those are such difficult skills for people to learn who have really high specialized training. And yet, like, that's where the companies who are going to excel, that are going to have consistent year-over-year growth, regardless of the political or economic landscape, like, those are the companies that invest in the leadership of their entire organization, not just one person or whatever else. Like, they understand when they develop the team, the entire business benefits, the entire business. And it's really difficult for some people to get around that particular corner. Like, they just think, hey, I just need to sell more cakes, or I just need more patients, or I just whatever. That's not the key to building a successful, thriving company, in my opinion. Man, I'm probably pissing people off too today. So this is fun.
No, it's perfect. Sometimes they need to hear it, right? I think that for a lot of people too, they think that, well, everybody else needs to change but me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you say leadership training and they're like, oh yeah, I got a whole team of people that need leadership training. And they're like, hold on.
Yep.
You're the only person that you can change. You can't change anyone else. And maybe sometimes we need to look in the mirror. And that's a tough conversation we have with a lot of our clients that go through our program and build this process that we're talking about. Is sometimes we got to look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe you're the problem. And it's owning that. And that's tough.
It is very tough. It's almost like parenting. If anyone's like a legit, decent parent, like, there's this part where you get humbled by the fact that your kids learn all of your character flaws. They learn all of your bad habits. And you see whatever good intentioned thing that you do and have justified for decades. Like, now you see this other human doing it with abandon, and they don't understand, like, why you ever started acting that way or making that stupid choice. Yeah, it is very humbling to see a company live out your own character flaws, to see your family live out your own character flaws. Like, oh my gosh, developing yourself as a leader is not for the weak-hearted, not at all.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, it comes down to where we really started talking a little bit about having a solid process in place to do that stuff. You can't just go to a leadership camp for the weekend, go to Tony Robbins' little 2-day weekend thing and be like, I'm a leader now.
It's like, hurrah, I bought a book.
And a lot of times we talk about too, when you're developing leaders, and this goes for both the entrepreneur and anyone on their leadership team, is you have to put a system in place so the accountability is there, so that you can progress, so that you can make sure that these things are happening. You were talking about that ROI piece before. I don't know how often it happens to you, but I can tell you countless number of times where I've gone to people and I was like, what do your metrics look like for recruiting? And they're like, there's metrics in recruiting? Like, it's kind of like just this blank stare. Like, we don't track any of that stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And to me, that like goes down to process, but it goes back to a lot of the things too. I think sometimes we don't want to track it because we don't want to know.
Maybe, but that, if you don't track it because you don't want to know, that says like there's a degree of ineptitude, right? Like, you're not, like, you are willfully ignorant on the information. And that sounds awfully dark to think that most people think that way. I would probably more lean on the lines of people don't measure things because they either don't know how, they don't prioritize that, solving that particular problem.
So you're telling me you've never had somebody that you said, hey, let's go start tracking this. And they're like, oh, I had no idea I was bleeding that bad.
Oh, no.
And they just wanted to turn a blind eye to it.
I would say 100% of the guys that, especially when you start showing data, there's a whole saying of like, if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. So when you start showing data, like, this is actually what's happening. I've never heard anyone in their life say, well, yeah, that's on purpose. Like, I'm bleeding like this because I want to. It's like when you say, like, here's how much money you're leaving on the table, like, here's your cost of acquisition, like, here's how much your actual overhead is, which means your pricing is probably wrong, which means you're actually bleeding out the busier you get. Like, that gets really, like, when you get into like time value costing analysis, where they start realizing the equation of how busy they are versus the time that they spend and how that affects their profitability, people's heads start melting because no one does that on purpose, right? They just don't have the tools or the opportunity to learn anything better. And so with marketing, some of the KPIs are pretty apparent, knock on wood, like, hopefully. And so they might have some, even if they think that they're wrong KPIs, like, there's something for them to gravitate to. But how do you like measure things like customer experience, or how someone follows a process, or how happy employees are? Like, do you always do these NPS sort of surveys of your internal team? Like, some people don't even know that these sort of NPS things exist. Like, they just have no clue. It doesn't mean that they don't want to know. They just, how do you quantify how, if somebody's happy or not waking up out of bed and driving to the office?
That might be some of them, but I have Stop turning away work, burning out your team, and working so hard. Learn about the proven process that businesses everywhere are using to save time, save money, and hire all the people they need. We'll train your team to implement and run this process in-house so you can grow as fast as you want. Book a call with our team at corematters.com. Actually had people tell me we don't survey our employees because we don't want to know what they think. Because it's bad.
Oh, gosh.
Because it's bad. And we know it's bad. And it's easier to just keep doing what we're doing than it is to actually deal with the problem.
Are those people listening right now? Are they watching this show?
I really hope so. Those kinds of people usually don't end up working with us, so I don't know how things turn out for them.
My gosh.
But there are people out there like, yeah, we know it's bad. That's why we don't ask.
It's like, I know that I might have cancer, but I don't want to see the doctor because, well, you win some, you lose some. It's like, whatever.
It's amazing to me how often people will be like, well, how do we find this stuff out? How do we find this stuff out? Well, have you ever asked an employee?
No, we can never.
No. Why would we do that? Like, you want to find out? Go ask them. And it's crazy. Like when they actually get it, this light bulb moment happens and they're like, I asked them and they told me this and oh my gosh, it was so profound and it was amazing and I can do so much with it. And I was like, so do you think it'd be easier to ask them next time? Heck yeah, I'm going to ask all the time. It's just, I think that sometimes it's easier to turn away and play the victim card than it is to actually confront it head on and deal with it because it might be painful.
I can totally see that. Like, so like we use a tool within Levergy called Office Vibe, which I think one of the things I like about it is one, it automates the process.
Love that.
So like if you're a manager, right, you don't have to like think about like whatever, but it's also like it measures different parts of the organization, the culture and the experience and tries to quantify them. Right. So it tries to make these outliers because I think a lot of these things, when they get into like experience and what people think and feel, it gets so like touchy feely and it's like hard for people to quantify. But with like Office Vibes, it's like, it maps it out. Like, how supported do you feel from your manager? And the feedback comes back anonymous. So you can select these trends over time. So as a leadership team, we can review, hey, we're knocking it out of the park with people feeling like their management supports them. Like, fantastic. And we can see aggregates of like trends. So that's awesome. But people have the opportunity to like opt into revealing something and like shouting out, like, here's something I would really like help with. Here's something I'd like to encourage someone else on. Like, then they can like reveal their identity so you can like drill deeper if that opportunity is there. But man, if nothing else, like seriously, if you're listening to this and you're afraid of employee feedback, at least get a tool like Office Vibe. I don't remember how much it costs. It's worth it. Like just randomly start listening to what people are already saying. They're already talking about you at home. They're talking about you at the bar. They're talking about you to friends. They're already talking about you. At least listen to the conversation. At least listen. Yeah. I mean, anybody that's been around in the marketing space for any period of time has probably heard voice of the customer. Mm-hmm. I know what the customer is saying. We want to know what the customer is thinking. We have NPS. Well, they have ENPS too, which is Employee Net Promoter Score. But we've all heard of NPS in the sense of the marketing side of things. And like we were talking about earlier, it relates so well, the customer acquisition funnel, the employee acquisition funnel, the retention funnels, like they almost overlap. And that's what I love about the work that we do here is just because we've turned recruiting into a marketing activity and the marketing teams love it. It's fun, it's new. But I find that it's so difficult, and I don't know why this is, but it's so difficult for people to make the leap from, well, we ask our customer every single time we interface with them, but we never ask our employees. We'll say they're our number one customer, but we don't treat them like we'd treat a customer. Yeah. Like, I don't know why that is. That's probably topic, have some psychologist on the show or something to really dig deep into why people don't do that. But I love what you're saying with the Office Vibes and just getting that anonymous feedback. And especially as your team grows and you don't know everybody as well and you don't have as much time to spend with them. Like when you're 4 or 5 people, it's pretty easy to kind of know what everything's going on. But when you hit that 50 mark, things change. Yeah. It gets different. It totally does. Like we're at the point now, like within the agency, like I don't interview or hire anyone now. So we had 2 new hires this morning at staff meeting. Never met these people. Like had no idea that these humans existed. But seeing the Office Vibe kind of feedback results as they come in, I don't remember if it's weekly or every 2 weeks, whatever, but it makes it easy for me to kind of gauge the vibe of the team even if I don't know who the team is specifically. Like I don't know if someone's having a bad day or if they don't like someone else's personality. It takes all that out of the equation.
Well, you bring up something that I would love to know a little bit more about, talking about process, because I would imagine, I'm guessing here, Ryan, so if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that in order for you to get to the point where you no longer interview, to where you start trusting your team to do it, there was a process involved. Like that did not happen overnight. You didn't just flip a switch.
Nope.
Because that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with. They're 25, 30, 50 employees, and the owner is still doing all of the hiring, all of the vetting. Talked to somebody the other day, did not end up working with them, and the owner takes every employee and their spouse out to dinner. The owner does it. So they're like 60 employees.
That's cool. And that's cool. Nice.
But they're like 60 employees. Like,
yeah.
That's probably the first and last time they ever get to see you because you're busy doing owner stuff. How did you get there? How did you get to the point where you were actually able to trust your team to make these hires without your involvement and know that it was going to be good for the company?
That whole process, which by the way, I would still say that I'm still in learning how to delegate and elevate that responsibility more. But all in, it's probably two years of process. So It started by me realizing I was working 80, 90 hours a week. I had all these really smart, capable people on the team. And someone told me like, bro, they can't sit in the chair if you're sitting in the chair for them. I'm just doing too much and I'm not trusting them to do what they were hired to do. And so I went into staff meeting the next morning after someone told me this, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, okay, as of today, I am fired. And as of today, you are all now entrusted to do the job that you were hired to do. Like you break it, you fix it. If it's on fire, figure it out. And I literally said, I'll be in a Napa if you need me. And I packed a bag and went to Napa Valley for like 3 weeks just to force the team to deal with me not being around.
Oh yeah. Throw them in the deep end.
Yeah, totally. But because otherwise they were just relying on me to jump in and fix it. And for me to be the person who did the stuff, I needed them to feel my absence. So that started the process to us like eventually adopting a process called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you're not familiar, highly recommend it. But Gino Wickman has a series of books, including like Traction, Rocket Fuel's another one, where it's just a series of processes. It's not complicated. It literally is not rocket science, but it requires a lot of discipline to be very clear. And part of that is getting really clear on we don't call it the org chart anymore. We call it the accountability chart, and like, who are the roles and how do you hold those roles accountable? And so in that you say, this role is responsible for X, Y, and Z. And here are the KPIs that we're going to measure how well they're doing X, Y, and Z. And you set these people up for success. Everyone has clarity on what their scorecard is. Are they doing the right thing? Are they doing the wrong thing? And you can measure this. We measure everything weekly. But over time, it makes it where everyone knows what everyone's trying to do, right? Like I can go into our director of operations or any of our senior account managers or any of our senior team leads. Yeah. I know exactly the roles that position needs to do. I know exactly the KPIs they need to hit. I can walk in and I can gauge within 15 seconds, are they doing well or not? And they can do it for me. So it makes it easier to when we need to hire someone new. We know the roles, we know the clarity, we know the things we're looking for. And it's easier to then trust and empower other people because there's clarity and alignment on those sort of things. We're not just winging it. It's not just hiring someone because I like them. In fact, if I do like them, I'm very cautious. It means I'm probably have a blind spot that I'm not mindful of, and I need somebody else to ground it. But yeah, starting with me firing myself a couple of years ago and then moving into like adopting and implementing the EOS framework, it's been a really helpful process to help get me out of the role of like being the primary, write the job description, post the thing, and like manage all the applicants when they come in, do all the interview process, like blah, blah, blah. At this point, I don't even meet them until they show up to a staff meeting. It's like, oh, cool. Hey, a new face. That's great. It's been a transition.
That's great. One of the things that I really like about EOS is that it's very outcome driven. Even when you start setting up your processes, it's like, what's the 20% that gets you 80% of the results? Like one of the things that people in general are resourceful. They're very resourceful. If you tell them what you want them to deliver, they'll go figure out how to do it. And they'll probably do it more efficient, more effective at a lower cost than you ever would have. And you taking that step back and saying, here's the KPIs, here's the definition of the role. Like you had involvement in that. You said, now go find them, go figure them out, go onboard them, go train them, and they show up. And I think this comes from a lack of leadership, like we were talking about before. Too often we look at it and we go, you know what? I need to be involved because no one's going to ever do it as good as me.
Yeah, that's the biggest bunch of malarkey. I just said malarkey. That is the owner founder like prison, right? Is like the only they can do it. And I can be honest, the people who that is legitimately accurately true for, that list of people in the world might be less than 10.
Yeah.
Like it's not categorically true. Anybody can make a cake. Anybody can turn a wrench. Anybody can do what you do. Get over it. You're not Elon Musk. When owners, founders, managers, leaders, when they're able to swallow the pill, that their best use of their resources is to train people to replace their job, right? Like that is a fundamental pivot on not how things need to happen, but who can get them done for me. And that mental shift, that's the difference between businesses that struggle and businesses that grow.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've probably heard this before. I've heard it in a lot of leadership mentoring circles, is that the owner is the bottleneck in every single business.
Always.
And there might be 10 people in the world where that's not the case. But other than that, the owner is bottleneck, and the owner has to get themselves out and not be involved in the day-to-day. And I do think that a lot of times it's a humbling process too. Like it's something you have to go through and say, hey, maybe I'm not the best at this. Maybe there are people better than me.
And look, I'm swallowing my own medicine. So people think like these are just like academic exercises that don't exist in the real world. There was an issue last week that popped up. It was a fire inside the company and dealing with the client, blah, blah, blah. And my first instinct is like, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to put out the fire. I'm going to save the day. Everyone's happy.
You're going to be the hero.
I got to tell you, man, I could totally do everything there. Like I could fix the problem quickly, faster than everyone, whatever else. I'm good. The problem is I had to think about it. Like if I owned a restaurant, right? If I'm owning a restaurant and the chef ups and quits, there's no way in hell that I'm jumping back in the kitchen and acting like I'm the chef. Like no competent owner in the world would do that. That's not what you do. What you would do is go get on the phone, get on Facebook, like get whatever sort of contact you can do to get a chef in the kitchen, even for an interim, until you figure it out. You're still using other people to solve the problem. You're not solving it yourself. When I like swallowed my own medicine of, I can't jump in and fix this. I need to be thinking like the restaurant owner. I need to be looking for a chef. I need to find the chef, let the chef do the work. That is a really liberating way to not only solve the problem, but also to elevate your own leadership skills, because it takes away your own critical bandwidth, right? You're no longer responsible for everything rising and falling. Now you're responsible for attracting the right who's, which now it's like, it's even more important to have the right mission, vision, values, hiring processes, so you can get the right people in the right seats with the right roles, people who get it, want it, and the capacity to do it. When you get those people and all your hiring systems are firing in that end, now you can build a machine. Like now it's something you don't have to go put on the floppy chef hat, whatever that's called. Now you can actually run a business.
Yeah, I think that last 60 seconds, I think you quoted like 4 or 5 EOS tools. Clearly you run on EOS. Like you definitely have that vocab down, and I think it's great. You know what, Ryan? This is not where I expected today's episode to go. I think you said that earlier too. I loved it though. It was so great to really talk about these leadership principles and the process and the importance of the owner being able to back out of the business. I mean, there's just so much truth in all of this. And there is so much opportunity for all of us, myself included, to learn from today's conversation, in that as entrepreneurs, we're often the bottleneck. And it's really easy to look around and say, hey, everybody else is the problem. But sometimes we need to look in the mirror and say, maybe I need some work too. So Ryan, thank you so much for this. It was great. You do have a marketing company and you do work with this stuff. And for those listening right now, I met Ryan years ago, and him and his team are just wicked brilliant when it comes to executing on marketing. And the thing that I love most about him is the level of transparency. And I think that's something else that we can add to this conversation, is learn to be transparent with your people, because they don't need to not know what's going on. And that can often cause a lot of problems. So Ryan, if people want to learn more about your company and what you do, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably the best way. We have a website, levergy.io. There's a giant green button at the top that says book a call. If you're in the home services space, you're looking for someone to do marketing, like that's what we do. If you're like, hey, I'm kind of enjoying nerding out on the business talk and I like the idea of management. We also have a podcast, like totally to cover all sorts of topics. It's not just marketing, but that's Blue Collar CEO. You can listen to that wherever you listen to the podcast. But yeah, if you're looking for marketing, levergy.io. If you don't care about marketing, but I like the idea of business nerds, cool, Blue Collar CEO, and you can find us there.
Oh, Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed this episode.
Dude, this is fun. Thanks for Talent Tackle Box. Like, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you.